Oh, there we go. So the first thing that I want to let you know is that this is a pilot study, meaning that we don't have any sort of control arm and we don't have any sort of placebo doses. So we know when people are coming in that they're getting psilocybin, and we've so far had 15 participants lined up, and most of them are through at least their first psilocybin session. Actually, we have one lady who will be going through her first session next week. And this is the pilot study to assess the feasibility of treating nicotine addiction using psilocybin, along with a few other elements that are combined in our approach. Among the 15 participants that we've gotten so far, there are 10 male, 5 female, and with a mean age of about 51 years. And they smoke an average of 20 cigarettes a day, or about a pack a day. And they have been smoking about that much for around 30 years. And that is kind of a snapshot of our participant sample, the people that we've been running. So these are fairly heavy smokers, people who've been smoking for a long time. And our protocol, it consists of 15 weeks of counseling meetings, as well as 3 psilocybin doses, moderate to high dose. And we have those spaced out at 5, 7, and 13 weeks post the beginning of the treatment. And most of our counseling is actually cognitive behavioral based, meaning that we talk a lot about thoughts and behaviors that are related to smoking and how that works and how we think people will be best able to cope with craving and temptation to smoke after they quit. So the good news is so far 91.6% or 11 out of 12 of our participants have quit smoking. So a little caveat, I said that there were 15 participants, but we'll be mostly talking about 12 of them today who have made it through the quit process. 2 of them quit last week, and 1 of them is quitting, like I said, next week. And so since it's so early, it's best not for us not to really have any data to talk about them yet. But for the main study presentation, our principal investigator, Matt Johnson, will be speaking on Sunday in the clinical track at the East Hall. So if you'd like to hear more about this study, then I would direct you to Matthew Johnson's talk on this study, and he'll talk a little bit more about the primary outcomes. So what I'll be talking about today is the potential psychological mechanisms of action that are going on in the psilocybin facilitated treatment. To briefly orient you, volunteers are first cleared through a pretty rigorous psychological and physical screening process, after which we will go through 4 weekly meetings, which are basically counseling meetings where we get to know one another, we build a sense of trust and rapport, and at that point we also set the quit date, which is the first psilocybin session. The 8 to 10 hours that we spend beforehand, like I said, is very important in building that trust and rapport, which is useful for having more profound and safe sessions under the influence of psilocybin, of course. So after the participants have quit and after their first session, we ask them whether the psilocybin had helped them to quit smoking in their opinion, and if so, how. And these data were collected in self-report questionnaires roughly between 1 and 2 weeks after their quit date. So participants were asked, as I said, how did they think the psilocybin helped them to quit smoking? And we present them with a list of options. These are kind of our best guesses of how we thought it might be working. And so these are the 5 options that are on our questionnaire. And there are also 2 other responses, one being that the psilocybin did not help them to quit, and the other being an other response where they get to write in their own responses. This is a sort of circle all of that apply scenario. So we have 83.3% of respondents saying that they thought that the psilocybin helped change their orientation toward the future so that long-term benefits would outweigh the immediate desires to smoke. And so that was the most popularly endorsed reason that psilocybin was able to help them to quit smoking. And as you see in descending order, we also have that psilocybin supposedly helped them to strengthen their belief in their ability to quit. It helped them change their life priorities or values, such that smoking was no longer more important than quitting. And it also helped them to reduce stress involved with quitting, as well as reframing quitting as a spiritual task. So again, these were the items that we gave them and that they endorsed in that order. None of the participants responded that the psilocybin session was not useful in quitting smoking, so that's also good news. Some of the other reasons that they did give us were that the psilocybin sessions increased their awareness of the addictive process, that the psilocybin sessions had given them increased determination to quit, also that they had a sense of greater space or distance between smoking cravings and their behavioral response to those cravings. And kind of like to think of that as the cravings you can see them coming, is what the participants say, and when they have that extra sense of space, they're able to react in a way that's novel, so not picking up a cigarette and smoking it. And finally, one of our participants wrote in that by exploding the awareness of the preciousness of existence, voluntary choices of unhealthy practices are diminished, which, of course, was one of the ones that we forgot to add to our list, but it's... So beyond the self-report asking participants why it is that they thought the psilocybin helped, we were also taking measures from the smoking literature that would help us to pinpoint some of the corollary psychological processes. And as a caveat, we do like to keep in mind that there are obviously some biological processes going on here, since psilocybin is a serotonergic agonist. But we haven't started to look into that quite yet. That's something that we're looking forward to examining further in the future. But as of right now, we're kind of confining our view to some of these psychological processes. And what we found with the assessment data is that people are reporting increased confidence in their ability to abstain from smoking after their psilocybin sessions. And people are also reporting decreased craving, decreased temptation, desire, and intention to smoke after their psilocybin session. So I would like to show you some of that data. So here you can see this is from the Smoking Abstinence Self-Efficacy Scale by De Clemente et al. And you can see there that there's a general downward trend in the temptation to smoke. And where is that line right here being the first psilocybin session, and this line right here being the second psilocybin session. And there's, of course, a trend towards the less and less temptation to smoke. And you can also see in this other graph here that our participants are showing increased sense of confidence in their ability not to smoke after their psilocybin sessions. I'm sorry? The units are based on items and their ratings of these items. So an example of an item would be, how tempted would you be to smoke when at a bar or cocktail lounge, on a scale from 1 to 5. And so that's what the scores are representing. Yeah. So in their own words, the participants are describing some of these processes as well. For instance, our participant number 1, who's a 26-year-old female, said after that during her first session, quote, "I saw an image of my lighting a cigarette and saw that image duplicated many times over and tried to count all the cigarettes I've had in my lifetime. I tried to remember specific ones, but mostly I just kept coming back to that one image duplicated and saw that there's no such thing as just one. One cigarette is never enough, 1,000 is never enough." So we can see how such an insight might play into having a decreased temptation to smoke, in the sense that there's no satiety that comes from smoking. Participant number 2, along the lines of confidence, remarked simply after his first session that, "I am confident and content to be who I am. I am confident and content anything feels possible." So again, this shows an increase in the sense of self-confidence, which is not just related to smoking, but obviously it can carry over into that. So here's some more of our preliminary data regarding craving. And so this is from the Wisconsin Smoking Withdrawal Scale. And this is a graph of participant responses to their craving subscale. And as you can see, again, there's a general kind of downward trend here in that direction for people between their baseline and post-1 and post-2 psilocybin sessions. You do see there is one outlier here, and that actually happens to be the one gentleman who did not successfully quit smoking after going through the protocol. And as a caveat, we would also like to say that unfortunately, that gentleman was forced to leave the country on an international business travels, and as a result of that, he missed 2 months of the treatment, the last 2 months of the treatment, and the third psilocybin session. So we suspect that might have something to do with his, his trouble in staying. He also did go from smoking a pack plus a day to smoking 5 cigarettes roughly a month. So it's not necessarily a failure, but in terms of an abstinence-only model, then of course he was still smoking at that time of the follow-up. And again, in their own words, the participants, when describing their experiences, say something that is very congruent with what we're getting with our measures. For instance, after facing challenges within the session, coping with some intensely uncomfortable physical sensations and great anxiety, I was left feeling empowered to deal with any possible future cravings concerning smoking. During the session, I felt as though I had already completed my withdrawal from smoking. I felt that all the work had already been accomplished. I felt amazed, grateful, and giddy about everything being so simple. And participant 12 likewise said, with regards to smoking cessation, when the thought occurs that I'd like one now, it seems that the craving need can be easily overcome, that by shifting my thoughts to the intense, vivid, enlightening experience during the session, it distracts me long enough to stop thinking about the cigarettes. Also, deep breaths and Altoids. So we definitely had found that a lot of our participants pick up chewing gum, smoking, eating carrot sticks or pistachios, a lot of substitute behaviors to ease them into the transition of going from smoking to non-smoking. Because as you can imagine, it can be fairly jarring to go from a pack-a-day habit to 0 cigarettes a day.